So here we are at NOAA in the NOAA conference in Zurich. I've got another great guest with me here today. If you could say who you are and who you're representing.
Of course. Hi, my name is Nick Delaforge, and I'm with Planet A Ventures. Planet A Ventures is basically an early stage green tech fund that I founded with a couple of other entrepreneurs around 2 years ago. And we try to give science a voice when making investment decisions.
Okay. So when you say you're trying to give science a voice when making investment decisions, you're looking at companies that you can then apply the science to see if they're actually doing the right thing. Is this the kind of concept?
I think, yeah, you framed it right. So where we're coming from is that up until now, whenever we take investment decisions, especially in venture, if we try to put it graphically into a Venn diagram, so two overlapping circles, we've been looking at teams and we've been looking at the business model. And wherever investors saw a suitable overlap, they invested into. And the innovation that we want to bring into the space and have brought, I would say by now successfully, is that we added a third circle, which is the actual scientific measurement of how good or bad is it for the biosphere of our planet. And in order to do so, we did not reinvent the wheel. There is a lot of methodology out there on how we can actually be very precise, very empirical about how good or bad something is. And we are using something called life cycle assessments. Okay. A life cycle assessment in a nutshell is a very holistic overview of all materialistic and energetic inputs which are needed to create a certain product. Mm-hmm. So if I, for example, look at my phone, mm-hmm. I can very precisely drill down and say, in order to produce that phone over its entire lifetime and how I can recycle it, I emitted X grams of CO2, I consumed this many liters of water, this many raw materials, and so on. And we do this for the innovation and for what we have today, compare the two with each other, create a delta, and then we are able to say, okay, is this significantly better than what we have today? Without that narrow focus on nothing but climate change, but we look at the planetary boundaries as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, planetary boundaries, because one of our partners is the Exponential Roadmap mm-hmm. and Johan Rockström. So we love him deeply. Let me ask you a question on the life cycle analysis then. Is it possible to apply that to all products from both developed and developing countries, or companies, or should I say, from developed and developing countries, or are there some gaps in some parts of the world?
So the crux always lies in what's your reference system that you mm-hmm. compare it to. Mm-hmm. So there are some very straightforward models. So for example, we invested into a company called Wild Plastic. And Wild Plastic is supporting plastic collection initiatives around the globe. They, for example, ship plastic which has been collected in beaches in Haiti, mm-hmm. ship it to Hamburg, melt it into pellets, and then produce throwaway material out of it, like trash bags or packaging material. And so intuitively, one would say that's ludicrous. You can't put mm-hmm. trash on container ships which are running on heavy oil mm-hmm. just to then produce trash bags out of it. That does not make sense. Mm-hmm. But for us, this was basically day zero in understanding we don't have intuitively the right understanding of impact dimensions, because when you start to look into the data, you find to transport a ton of anything from Haiti to Hamburg by ship, mm-hmm. you emit around 73 kilograms of CO2. That's based on average consumption patterns of the carrier classes mm-hmm. that are used on that specific route. If you produce a ton of new plastic or virgin plastic, you currently emit 6.5 tons of additional CO2. Mm-hmm. So that's orders of magnitude higher. And so this really changes the perspective on what's more important, saving the transportation emissions mm-hmm. Or avoiding to produce new plastic overall. Yeah. And that's an approach that we like to put wherever we do it. And with a trash bag, it's very easy to compare a wild plastic trash bag with an existing trash bag, right? It's very straightforward. I'm very interested in the entire field of geothermal drilling. Mm-hmm. Geothermal drilling has the potential of tapping into a new renewable energy source, exactly. Supercritical mm-hmm. geothermal energy, mm-hmm. which is currently not being used because we are stuck by engineering or limited by engineering challenges. We mm-hmm. can't, at linearly rising costs, drill down deep enough at an adequate speed. And so when we, for example, look at an alternative drilling company, the Wild Plastic way would be to compare that drilling head with another drilling head, which doesn't provide the full picture. So what you have to do is you have to change the reference system so that it makes sense. So what you would do is you compare the energy mix that you get out of a functioning geothermal, supercritical geothermal energy well mm-hmm. with the energy mix that you currently have at a certain location. And so if that's mostly coal, then you have a huge improvement.
Exactly. I get the point there. And interesting as well, because geothermal is potentially a base load energy source, which is fantastic. I know a bit about it because I used to live in Kenya, in Nairobi, working for the UN Environment Program. We helped Kenya there with the World Bank to do some new drilling techniques on the Great Rift Valley. And, you know, geothermal's really taken off in Kenya in the last 15 years. Super, really interesting. These are quite short interviews, so I'd love to talk more, but it sounds really interesting indeed. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we have a little pet passion of ours as well, which is that the International Monetary Fund brought out some numbers just before the UN Climate Conference in Glasgow on just how much money was being spent on fossil fuel subsidies, and it runs in the trillions. And so we started a count-up clock from Glasgow. So this clock is now about maybe 3 or 4 weeks old. But you can see, as up till now, if we just look at it on the screen here, so we're close to $600 billion has been spent by governments in the last 3-4 weeks on fossil fuel subsidies. Could this be better spent?
I mean, we briefly talked about this before, but I don't have to play surprise. That number is absolutely horrible to me because, I mean, it's a very rhetorical question. Could this be spent better anywhere else? And the obvious question is yes. And there is a ton of different applicances. I don't want to say whatever else you fund with it, but that might be over the top. But if this, for example, is spent into, for example, what we are learning right now when it comes to the development of scaling solar, there is a lot of money, but what is really limiting companies to get a foot off the ground is that initial 500,000 of own capital that they have to provide to banks so that they can get the rest of the 90% of the funding. And this is a process which is happening today, but it takes 18 to 36 months. And if you can decelerate that from that time to 1 month, then we would be able to scale solar in an unprecedented fashion.
Exactly. So many fascinating choices. Well, thank you very much for being on our show.
Thank you.
And I hope NOAA delivers what you want it to deliver for you. And it's been great to chat with you.
Likewise, Nick.
Thank you.